Could this be the moment that changes the royal family forever? Imagine waking up one morning to find that everything you thought was untouchable, the titles, the privileges, even the legacy your family built over centuries, could be stripped away in an instant. That is exactly the storm brewing around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and it's unlike anything we've seen in modern royal history. Parliament has just initiated a bill that threatens to remove their royal titles, and on top of that, a staggering $550,000 tax payment is looming over them. But the story doesn't end there. Beneath the surface, hidden motives, whispered betrayals, and financial secrets are swirling in ways that could shock the entire nation. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. In the next hour, we are going to unravel the full story, layer by layer. You might think you know what's happening, but the truth is far more complex, far more dramatic, and far more dangerous for Harry and Meghan than anything reported in the tabloids. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this isn't just about money or titles. It's about power, influence, and a monarchy facing one of its most significant crises in decades. Let's start at the beginning. It all began quietly, behind closed doors. Parliament, which rarely moves on royal matters unless provoked, convened a series of confidential meetings earlier this year. What was discussed is still mostly hidden from public view, but insiders have hinted at a growing frustration among lawmakers. For years, Harry and Meghan have charted their own path, stepping back from royal duties, engaging in high-profile media projects, and building an independent brand. While some applauded their courage, others in Parliament saw a dangerous precedent forming. A royal couple living a lifestyle funded, at least in part, by public resources, while simultaneously defying centuries-old tradition and legal expectations. Then came the numbers. A review of tax filings and property arrangements revealed discrepancies totaling an eye-watering $550,000. For most of us, that's enough to buy a house, start a business, or fund a luxurious year-long vacation around the world. For Harry and Meghan, it's a warning shot, a public demonstration that no one, not even a prince or a duchess, is above the law. And yet, the public response has been polarized. Social media erupted with outrage, support, and speculation. Some hailed it as a long-overdue moment of accountability. Others accused Parliament of overreach, interfering in personal matters that should remain private. But one thing is clear. The royal spotlight has never been this intense, and for Harry and Meghan, there's no escaping it. Now, let's talk about the human side of this story. Because while titles and taxes are critical, the emotional impact cannot be ignored. Imagine the tension within the couple's household. Every phone call from a banker, every alert from a media outlet, every text from an advisor carries weight that most of us can't even fathom. There's pressure, not just from Parliament and the media, but from the very institution that raised Harry, the monarchy itself. He is, after all, the son of a king. He grew up surrounded by rules, traditions, and expectations that dictate behavior at every level. Meghan, meanwhile, has navigated this world as an outsider, often facing public scrutiny and private criticism simultaneously. Together, they are under siege from multiple angles: legal, financial, familial, and public. And the timing is striking. This bill doesn't appear in isolation. It comes on the heels of recent media exposés, a surge of public interest in royal finances, and ongoing tensions within the family. Some insiders suggest that the decision to act now was strategic. Why? Because public attention is at its peak, and any delay could allow Harry and Meghan to continue expanding their brand unchallenged. Parliament, in a sense, is signaling, we are watching, and we will act. But here's the twist. While everyone focuses on the bill and the tax payment, there are whispers of far more substantial implications. Sources suggest that Parliament isn't just targeting financial missteps. They are challenging the very legitimacy of Harry and Meghan's royal standing. In other words, this isn't simply about money. It's about power, inheritance, and the line of succession. The ripple effects could reach every corner of the monarchy, potentially reshaping the institution for generations to come. Have you ever wondered how the public might react if a royal couple were stripped of their titles entirely? Would there be sympathy, outrage, or would the majority see it as justice finally served? Public sentiment matters in this case more than ever because the monarchy, while steeped in tradition, survives in the court of public opinion. Harry and Meghan's brand depends heavily on perception, and a legal battle over titles and taxes could tip that perception in a way that no media campaign or Netflix documentary could repair. Speaking of media, let's not forget the other players in this unfolding drama. Journalists, influencers, and commentators are already dissecting every leak, every statement, and every photograph. They are framing the story as a clash of old-world tradition and modern rebellion. Tabloids delight in sensationalism, while political analysts dissect the legal and constitutional implications. Meanwhile, royal historians weigh in on precedents, reminding the public that removing titles is rare, but not unprecedented. Every day, new theories emerge, new documents are leaked, and the story grows larger, more complex, and more combustible. Now, consider the psychological pressure. Harry, raised to uphold the family's image, is suddenly forced into the role of a defendant in a quasi-public trial. Meghan, who has navigated criticism from day one of joining the family, must now defend herself not only to the public, but also to the institution that has scrutinized her from the start. And all of this is happening while they maintain a high-profile lifestyle, manage their media projects, and attempt to protect their children from the chaos swirling around them. It's a pressure cooker scenario, and one misstep could have lasting consequences. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this story lies in the hidden motives and alliances behind the scenes. Not all lawmakers are united. Some see the bill as a necessary assertion of authority, while others worry about public backlash or international perception. Allies within the royal household are divided as well, with some advocating for negotiation and compromise, and others pushing for a hardline approach. Each whisper, leak, and statement is carefully calculated, and each move has the potential to change the trajectory of the entire situation. And here's a fact that might surprise you. This is not the first time Harry and Meghan have faced scrutiny over financial matters. Past media reports, confidential audits, and leaked correspondences have all hinted at unresolved questions about finances, housing arrangements, and expenditure. Yet, this time feels different. The combination of legal authority, parliamentary action, and public attention creates a storm that seems inescapable. As we dive deeper into this story, you'll see just how intertwined the elements of power, privilege, money, and family truly are. Every decision, every public statement, every legal filing becomes a part of a complex web, and one wrong move could have cascading consequences for years to come. And the tension doesn't stop at the palace gates. It extends to media outlets worldwide, to social media, and to public conversations happening at every level of society. Now, let me ask you directly, what would you do if your life, your reputation, and even your family legacy were suddenly up for public debate? Could you withstand the scrutiny? Could you navigate the legal and financial minefields while keeping your personal life intact? That's exactly the situation Harry and Meghan find themselves in, and the stakes could not be higher. And yet, despite all this pressure, there's one element that most people aren't talking about. The potential for a secret twist, something hidden in the documents, the parliamentary discussions, or the leaked communications that could completely change the narrative. Could there be an angle that shifts public sympathy back to Harry and Meghan? Or a discovery that makes the monarchy itself look vulnerable? Only time, and the next few chapters, will reveal the answer. So as we begin, I want you to keep a few questions in mind. Who really stands to gain if Harry and Meghan lose their titles? What will the $550,000 tax payment reveal about their financial dealings? And most importantly, is this the beginning of a new era for the monarchy, one defined by accountability, or is it simply another scandal that will fade with time? The story we're about to unfold is not just about money or privilege. It's about human emotion, ambition, betrayal, and the delicate balance of power within one of the world's most scrutinized families. And while it might feel like the end for Harry and Meghan, every twist we uncover could point to something even bigger, something none of us are fully prepared for. It started with whispers, not the kind of rumors that swirl in tabloids or social media feeds, but quiet, deliberate conversations behind closed doors, in rooms shielded from cameras, microphones, and even the public eye. Imagine the tension in a room where centuries of tradition meet modern accountability, where politicians and advisors weigh not just public opinion, but the stability of a monarchy. And in that room, the question on everyone's mind was clear. How far could Harry and Meghan push before someone in authority said enough? You see, this wasn't just a reactionary move. This was a calculated decision, built over months, possibly years. Parliament, often slow and measured, doesn't act lightly when it comes to royals. The institution of the monarchy is deeply entwined with national identity, historical precedent, and constitutional protocol. Yet, the more Harry and Meghan carved out an independent life, launching media projects, advocating causes, and expanding their brand, the more it became clear to some lawmakers that a line had been crossed. This wasn't about petty jealousy or media sensationalism. It was about authority, accountability, and precedent. The spark, according to insiders, came during a late-night session in Westminster. Lawmakers convened privately, away from press cameras, to review what they described as a long-overdue analysis of the Sussexes' public engagements, financial filings, and reported activities. In that session, a series of documents were laid out, some official, some leaked, some merely suggestions from auditors and royal accountants. Each piece painted a picture of a couple increasingly disconnected from the rules that had governed their predecessors. And the numbers were alarming. Not just the $550,000 in taxes under scrutiny, which, as you'll recall, isn't the kind of debt most people can ignore, but the broader implications. Royal titles, privileges, and allowances are not merely ceremonial. They carry both public trust and private responsibility. The suggestion from those documents was simple. If a member of the royal family steps outside the boundaries of duty and tradition, there must be consequences. And for Harry and Meghan, this could mean far more than financial scrutiny. It could mean stripping them of titles, responsibilities, and influence. But Parliament was cautious. They knew this wasn't just a legal matter. It was a political powder keg. MPs debated, analyzed, and even consulted constitutional experts. Some argued that a bill targeting Harry and Meghan would provoke international attention, possibly backlash from media outlets, and questions about overreach into personal lives. Others countered that this was a necessary step, not just for precedent, but for fairness. After all, if any other citizen were in a similar position, holding titles or influence while sidestepping financial obligations, would the government hesitate? Interestingly, the divisions weren't purely political. While the Conservative Party and certain crossbench MPs pushed for assertive action, others voiced concern about optics. How would the public react if Parliament appeared to target a royal couple personally? Could this be spun as punitive rather than principled? And yet, the more the Sussexes' activities were scrutinized, the more it seemed that a tipping point had been reached. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was tense. Advisors relayed updates about parliamentary discussions, each new leak sparking heated debates behind palace doors. Family members were said to be divided. Some advocating for a hands-off approach, suggesting the matter be allowed to unfold publicly without interference. Others urging a proactive strategy, fearing the damage to the monarchy's credibility. One anonymous source claimed that late-night calls and urgent messages flew back and forth, each aimed at determining the potential fallout of a bill targeting titles and privileges. It wasn't just internal politics. The public's perception played a key role in igniting the spark. Social media trends, news polls, and opinion pieces revealed growing frustration among certain demographics over perceived royal extravagance. Harry and Meghan's independent media projects, while successful, were often framed as cash grabs or attempts to bypass traditional royal duties. And in a country that values both tradition and accountability, this juxtaposition created a volatile environment. Lawmakers watching these trends began to wonder, if the monarchy fails to act, does it risk losing legitimacy in the eyes of the public? Then came the confidential memos. According to sources, several MPs received documents highlighting a series of inconsistencies and questions about the Sussexes' financial conduct. These were not accusations in the criminal sense, but raised enough concern to trigger parliamentary action. Some of these memos suggested that without legal intervention, Harry and Meghan's behavior could set a precedent for future royals. One in which titles, privileges, and public responsibility could be treated as negotiable. In short, this wasn't just about one couple. It was about the integrity of the monarchy itself. A critical moment occurred when a group of MPs convened an emergency caucus to discuss next steps. The tension in the room, according to one insider, was palpable. They debated not only whether to introduce a bill, but also what tone it should take, how public it should be, and the potential reactions from both the monarchy and the Sussexes themselves. Some argued for subtlety, suggesting that a private settlement or a negotiated repayment might suffice. Others, more forceful, contended that only a formal bill, with clearly defined legal consequences, would convey seriousness. Here's a surprising detail. One leaked note indicated that Parliament even discussed invoking a historical precedent, an obscure clause used in centuries past when royals acted outside expected norms. While the clause had never been fully enforced in modern times, it provided a framework that lawmakers could adapt to today's circumstances. This wasn't just bureaucratic maneuvering. It was a carefully considered strategy that merged history, law, and public accountability. Meanwhile, advisors to Harry and Meghan were not idle. They had their own sources within Parliament and the palace, feeding information back to the couple. There were last-minute legal consultations, discussions about media strategy, and attempts to frame their financial situation in a way that would appear responsible yet sympathetic. Meghan's team, in particular, is said to have been laser-focused on public perception, crafting narratives that could sway public opinion before Parliament acted. But despite all these maneuvers, one undeniable fact remained. The spark for the royal title removal bill had been lit. It was no longer a question of if Parliament would act, it was when. And the $550,000 tax matter wasn't just a number. It was the first visible strike in what promised to be a larger, far-reaching process. Lawmakers and advisors alike recognized that the public would be watching every move, every filing, every statement. This was about perception as much as legality. As the days passed, more leaks emerged. Confidential communications, unofficial memos, and even anonymous statements from palace insiders began circulating. Each leak added fuel to the fire, escalating the tension between the Sussexes and the very institution that had once celebrated them. And while the couple may have anticipated some scrutiny, the speed, intensity, and coordination of Parliament's response appears to have caught even their most seasoned advisors off guard. Imagine being in Harry's shoes. The son of a king, accustomed to a lifetime of privilege, suddenly facing a barrage of formalized parliamentary action, public scrutiny, and legal obligations. And Meghan, navigating her position as both an insider and outsider, is forced to react under pressure, constantly weighing public perception against legal strategy. Every move is calculated, every misstep amplified. The stakes are enormous, and the consequences could reverberate far beyond the couple themselves. And here's where the intrigue deepens. Sources suggest that some MPs were not merely concerned with financial responsibility or titles. They feared what Harry and Meghan represented, a new model of royal independence, one that could potentially undermine centuries of tradition. If a royal couple could operate largely outside the constraints of protocol, fund themselves independently, and still maintain influence and public favor, what would that mean for future generations of the monarchy? Parliament's actions, therefore, were not just reactive, they were preventative, a calculated measure to preserve the institution itself. The spark had ignited, but the flames were still contained for now. Parliament had laid the groundwork, but the drama, the media storm, the emotional fallout, and the legal battles were just beginning. Every document, every meeting, every leak added tension, setting the stage for a series of events that could ultimately reshape the royal landscape forever. Imagine waking up one morning to find that your very identity, your official titles, and even the privileges you've relied on for decades are suddenly being questioned in a formal legal document. That's exactly the reality Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing as Parliament moves forward with the royal title removal bill. At first glance, a bill might sound like dry bureaucracy, legal jargon, clauses, and footnotes that most people skim and forget. But for the Sussexes, this is anything but ordinary. It's a weaponized document, a blueprint for potentially stripping them of everything they once considered untouchable. The bill itself is complex, but the intent is unmistakable. At its core, It establishes a legal framework that allows Parliament to remove royal titles from any member of the monarchy who is deemed to have violated certain responsibilities, financial obligations, or conduct expectations. The language, while careful, is both explicit and expansive. It references historic precedents, outlines financial accountability measures, and clarifies the consequences of title revocation. Think of it as a map where every possible scenario is accounted for, leaving Harry and Meghan with minimal room to maneuver. From the moment this bill was drafted, those inside Parliament recognized its power. Unlike past discussions over royal conduct, this document isn't merely symbolic. It has teeth. Sections within the bill clearly define consequences for failing to pay taxes, misuse of public funds, and violations of public trust. Suddenly, the $550,000 tax dispute isn't just a number. It's a direct trigger that could set off a chain reaction, ultimately leading to the removal of titles. And the implications are vast. Titles are more than labels. They grant privileges, social status, influence, and even legal protections. Lose the title, and the personal and public consequences are profound. But here's a fascinating contradiction. While the bill is procedural and legalistic, its ramifications are intensely personal. For Harry, losing a title isn't just symbolic. It touches on his identity, his place in the family, and the legacy of his father and grandmother. Meghan faces a unique challenge. As someone who married into the monarchy, her identity is intertwined with Harry's, yet she has her own public persona and brand to protect. The bill, in essence, strikes at the very core of who they are, legally, publicly, and emotionally. And then there's the financial element. We know about the $550,000 tax obligation, but the bill also contains clauses that open the door for additional scrutiny. There's language that allows auditors and government officials to examine expenses, public funding, and any indirect support that may have been provided, intentionally or otherwise. Imagine the stress of knowing that every property purchase, every security arrangement, and every charitable donation could be questioned under legal scrutiny. For Harry and Meghan, this isn't just an inconvenience. It's a relentless spotlight on every aspect of their lives. One of the most dramatic aspects of the bill is its section on precedents. Lawmakers specifically referenced historical cases where royals lost titles, faced public scrutiny, or had privileges revoked. These cases, some centuries old, were meant to illustrate that no member of the monarchy is above accountability. But there's a twist. The bill doesn't just cite history, it expands upon it. It creates mechanisms for modern enforcement, making the potential consequences immediate and enforceable. In other words, this isn't academic, it's operational. So how does this affect Harry and Meghan's day-to-day life? Practically speaking, any formal notice from Parliament would initiate a legal process. The couple could contest, but the framework of the bill limits loopholes and creates tight deadlines. Imagine being in a position where even a small misstep in legal interpretation or public communication could accelerate the revocation process. Their advisors are reportedly scrambling to map out every potential scenario, but as insiders have suggested, even the most thorough planning may not be enough to counter the bill's reach. Now, consider the emotional weight of this. For decades, the monarchy has been enveloped in a certain aura of untouchability. Titles, privileges, and traditions create a structure where royal actions are buffered by centuries of precedent. But when those buffers are removed or threatened, the psychological impact is enormous. Harry has grown up with the awareness of public scrutiny, but never with the legal vulnerability that this bill represents. Meghan, while seasoned in public engagement and media strategy, is facing an existential challenge to her identity and social standing. Together, they are navigating a perfect storm of legal, emotional, and public pressure. And yet, the bill is more than just punishment. It's a signal. It's Parliament saying, we are in control. Royal privilege has limits. Accountability is non-negotiable. This is where the political undertones get even more intense. Supporters of the bill see it as a necessary assertion of authority, a recalibration of the monarchy's relationship with public expectations. Critics, however, argue that it's politically motivated, timed to exploit public sentiment, and designed to undermine the couple's independence. The tension is palpable. The Sussexes are caught between public opinion, parliamentary authority, and familial expectations. Here's another layer. The bill allows for exceptions, but only under strict conditions. For example, a royal could theoretically retain a title while paying outstanding taxes or rectifying misconduct. But the thresholds are narrow, and the processes require meticulous compliance. One slip, one missed filing, or one misinterpreted clause could trigger enforcement, leaving little room for negotiation. Think of it as walking a tightrope over a legal abyss, where balance and precision are the difference between maintaining a title and losing it entirely. And the public element cannot be ignored. Parliament understands that transparency is crucial. While much of the initial drafting occurred in secret, the final vote, hearings, and debates will be public. This means every misstep by the Sussexes could be magnified, analyzed, and dissected in real time by media outlets and social platforms. Social pressure, combined with legal pressure, creates a near unprecedented level of scrutiny. For Harry and Meghan, navigating this environment is both a strategic and emotional challenge. Now let's talk strategy. Advisors to the Sussexes reportedly discussed three main avenues: compliance, negotiation, or public challenge. Compliance would involve paying the disputed taxes immediately, demonstrating good faith, and adhering to the bill's provisions to preserve their titles. Negotiation could include legal settlements or agreements that allow them to maintain certain privileges while addressing Parliament's concerns. The public challenge, however, carries the most risk. It could portray them as defiant, trigger harsher penalties, and inflame public opinion against them. Every decision is a delicate calculus, with high stakes and limited margin for error. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the bill is its potential precedent. If enforced against Harry and Meghan, it could redefine how royal privileges are managed in the modern era. Future generations of royals may face stricter oversight, with clear expectations regarding financial accountability and public conduct. In effect, the bill is not just about one couple. It's about shaping the monarchy for the 21st century, ensuring that tradition does not override responsibility, and that influence is matched by accountability. And here's the kicker. Even with all the clauses, exceptions, and legal frameworks, the bill leaves room for uncertainty. Parliament intentionally drafted some sections ambiguously, giving legislators and officials discretion in interpretation. This ambiguity is both a weapon and a pressure point, creating stress for the Sussexes and their legal team. Every public action, private correspondence, and financial decision could be examined under the lens of the bill, making the stakes both immediate and ongoing. So, what does this mean for Harry and Meghan right now? In simple terms, they are in uncharted territory. The combination of title threat, financial scrutiny, public attention, and family pressure is unprecedented. While they have resources, advisors, and influence, the legal and public environment is shifting beneath their feet. Every choice matters, every action is magnified, and every misstep could accelerate consequences. And yet, there's an element most people are not yet aware of, a hidden twist within the bill itself, a clause that could alter the entire narrative in ways the Sussexes may not have anticipated. Something buried in the fine print, possibly overlooked in early briefings, but with the power to change everything if activated. What exactly is this hidden factor? How will it play out? And could it tip the scales against Harry and Meghan in a way no one expects? The stage is set, the players are in position, and the tension is palpable. As we move to the next chapter, you'll see how this seemingly abstract legal document translates into real-world consequences, media scrutiny, and familial drama that could shake the monarchy to its core. $550,000. Say it out loud and let it sink in. For most people, that number is staggering, a life-changing amount of money. But for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, it's not just about the dollars. It's about accountability, perception, and the growing pressure from every direction: Parliament, the monarchy, the media, and the public. What started as whispers about financial discrepancies quickly escalated into a full-blown crisis, one that could define their future, their legacy, and even their public image for years to come. The story begins with an internal audit, conducted quietly by officials tasked with reviewing royal finances. What they uncovered wasn't a minor oversight or clerical error. Instead, it was a series of inconsistencies in tax filings, housing allowances, and reported expenses that collectively added up to a shocking $550,000. This is money that, according to auditors, should have been accounted for differently, paid, or documented with far more clarity. For Harry and Meghan, this was the first public hint that their financial independence from royal funding came with strings they hadn't fully considered. The amount itself is only part of the drama. The real issue lies in perception. Public opinion is ruthless when it comes to money, especially royal money. The idea of a couple, already under intense media scrutiny, being accused of financial negligence, even unintentionally, struck a nerve across social media, news outlets, and the wider population. Headlines were immediate. Sussexes face $550,000 tax liability. Royal financial scandal unfolds. Are Harry and Meghan above the law? Each headline amplified the pressure, creating a perfect storm that no amount of legal expertise or public relations strategy could easily navigate. And it's not just the public who reacted. Buckingham Palace, already monitoring parliamentary developments, reportedly convened urgent meetings to assess the situation. Advisors debated how to respond, weighing the potential for public backlash against the need for financial accountability. For the palace, the question was clear. If Harry and Meghan failed to address this matter, what precedent would it set for future royals? Could one couple's financial missteps embolden others to sidestep responsibility, knowing that the consequences were negotiable or delayed? But here's the thing most people overlook. The $550,000 is not necessarily the final number. Some sources suggest that additional liabilities, including potential interest, fines, or misreported benefits, could push the figure even higher. And while this may seem like an abstract threat, it's very real for the Sussexes. Every financial decision, every property purchase, every charitable contribution could be re-examined under this new scrutiny. Suddenly, a lifestyle that once seemed independent and glamorous feels precarious, vulnerable to legal and public dissection. The impact on their day-to-day life is immense. Imagine checking your bank statements, seeing auditors' reports, and realizing that a sum equivalent to several years' worth of expenses could be demanded in full. Imagine the mental strain of knowing that every financial move is being watched, every public statement analyzed, and every leak to the press could magnify the issue. For Harry and Meghan, the $550,000 tax bombshell is not just about money. It's about reputation, control, and credibility in the public eye. The media frenzy was immediate. News outlets worldwide covered the story as if it were a blockbuster scandal. Social media exploded with speculation, memes, and heated debates. Some commentators framed it as long overdue accountability, while others painted it as a punitive attack on a couple trying to carve their own path. The contrast in narratives only heightened the drama. In one corner, you had stories emphasizing royal privilege and public responsibility. In another, stories highlighted independence, media freedom, and personal autonomy. Harry and Meghan were caught in the middle, facing both legal and narrative scrutiny simultaneously. And then there's the emotional dimension. For Harry, the financial implications touch on family legacy. He grew up immersed in royal tradition, with an understanding that public trust and personal responsibility are inseparable. To face a legal demand that could be framed as a failure to honor those responsibilities is deeply personal. For Meghan, the challenge is even more complex. She navigates a dual identity, a public figure in her own right and a member of a royal family under intense scrutiny. Both are under pressure to respond strategically while managing emotional fallout, public perception, and the well-being of their children. Surprisingly, some of the financial intricacies trace back years. Advisors have indicated that a combination of housing arrangements, property management, and international travel expenses created a complex web that auditors are only now untangling. In other words, the $550,000 figure represents more than just an isolated tax liability. It's the culmination of years of financial decisions intersecting with legal requirements, royal allowances, and public expectations. For Harry and Meghan, it's a perfect storm of accountability, timing, and perception. Adding another layer to the story, Parliament was reportedly alerted to the financial discrepancies months before any formal bill was drafted. Sources indicate that some MPs had been quietly monitoring the Sussexes' financial arrangements, waiting for the right moment to act. Why? Because the tax issue, while significant on its own, serves as a tangible starting point for broader accountability measures. It's one thing to debate titles and privileges in abstract terms. It's another to anchor those debates to a concrete financial obligation that the public can understand, debate, and scrutinize. And then came the legal strategy. Advisors to Harry and Meghan began assessing potential remedies. Could the tax be paid immediately to mitigate public and parliamentary pressure? Should they contest certain elements of the calculation, arguing interpretations of allowances or deductions? And what about future transparency? Every option had implications, and none were without risk. Legal experts described it as a delicate balancing act. Too aggressive, and it could inflame public opinion. Too passive, and it might be seen as weakness or guilt. Meanwhile, the palace watched closely. Advisors reportedly briefed senior family members on potential outcomes, public reactions, and the legal timeline. The stakes were clear. If Harry and Meghan failed to resolve this issue responsibly, it could trigger broader questions about the monarchy's ability to enforce financial accountability across all members. This wasn't just about one couple's mistakes. It was about safeguarding an institution that relies heavily on both perception and compliance. Interestingly, the $550,000 figure also became a lightning rod for social commentary. Opinion polls suggested that a significant portion of the public was frustrated, with many questioning why the couple had any exemptions or special considerations in the first place. Meanwhile, supporters argued that Harry and Meghan had already faced relentless public scrutiny and that this legal demand was a disproportionate attack. The result? A narrative battlefield where every word, every payment, and every public appearance became subject to scrutiny, criticism, or praise. And here's a surprising fact. Some sources indicate that the original tax assessment was delayed due to international complexities. With residences and properties spanning multiple countries, the Sussexes' financial obligations were far from straightforward. This complexity, however, did not protect them from parliamentary action. If anything, it highlighted the need for clarity and enforcement. What the auditors and MPs ultimately decided was that accountability could not be optional, regardless of geography or complexity. The human impact cannot be understated. $550,000 is more than a financial inconvenience. It's a symbol of exposure. Every payment, every decision, every error becomes public. The stress, the media attention, and the legal obligations converge into a pressure that few outside their world can truly understand. Harry and Meghan are navigating this storm in real time, trying to protect their legacy, their family, and their public image while balancing the very real financial consequences of past actions. But perhaps the most striking element of this chapter in their story is the timing. Why now? Why not years ago, when some of these discrepancies first appeared? According to insiders, it wasn't just the audit that triggered action. It was a confluence of media pressure, parliamentary urgency, and a broader push to assert accountability within the monarchy. The $550,000 tax bombshell became the spark, the tangible element that justified swift parliamentary action, and the public narrative quickly caught up. As the Sussexes prepared for the next steps, legal filings, payments, negotiations, and media strategies, they faced the reality that $550,000 is more than money. It is a signal, a warning, and a test. How will the public perceive them? How will the monarchy respond? And most importantly, how will Harry and Meghan navigate the complex legal and emotional landscape that now defines their lives? And just when it seemed the situation couldn't intensify further, a confidential memo surfaced, hinting at additional financial irregularities, previously undisclosed holdings, and questions about past allowances. Suddenly, the $550,000 was no longer a singular issue. It was potentially the tip of the iceberg, a small visible portion of a much larger financial storm looming over Harry and Meghan. The news didn't just reverberate through Parliament, the media, and the public. It ricocheted straight into the corridors of Buckingham Palace. Imagine the tension, advisors pacing the hallways, urgent messages flying between staff, and private discussions unfolding behind doors that had remained closed to the press for decades. For the palace, the royal title removal bill and the $550,000 tax demand weren't just matters of finance or legality. They were questions about authority, family unity, and the public perception of an institution built over centuries. From the very first leak, the atmosphere inside the palace was electric. Senior aides reportedly convened emergency meetings to assess the impact of Parliament's actions. They reviewed the bill's clauses, analyzed the tax issue, and debated how to balance discretion with transparency. One insider revealed that some members of the royal household feared immediate public backlash if the palace appeared to act too harshly, while others argued that a firm response was critical to maintain credibility. At the center of the storm, of course, were Harry and Meghan. Buckingham Palace, while officially neutral in the public sense, began quietly signaling the gravity of the situation. Advisors reminded them that titles are not merely ceremonial. They confer responsibilities and expectations. Any challenge to these privileges, particularly in conjunction with a tax dispute, is unprecedented in modern times. Sources suggest that these discussions were frank, direct, and designed to impress upon the couple the seriousness of Parliament's actions. This was not a negotiation. It was a reminder of the rules that govern even the highest echelons of the monarchy. The king himself reportedly weighed in, albeit behind closed doors. He is known to be measured and deliberate, but insiders indicated that he expressed concern over the potential ramifications of public perception. How would it look if Parliament stripped titles from a royal without a clear precedent in the modern era? How would the public react if Harry and Meghan's independence was framed as defiance rather than autonomy? These questions, both practical and existential, dominated private conversations in the palace. Meanwhile, senior family members reportedly offered differing perspectives. Some advocated for patience and discretion, emphasizing the importance of letting the legal process unfold without interference. Others pushed for proactive measures. Communication strategies, legal advisories, and even subtle public messaging that could influence opinion in favor of accountability. This internal debate underscored a unique challenge for the monarchy, balancing tradition and authority with evolving expectations in an era of instant information and relentless media scrutiny. The media, of course, did not wait. Leaks from within the palace, whether intentional or accidental, quickly made their way to newspapers and social platforms. Headlines speculated on the king's stance, family rifts, and potential fallout. Some stories portrayed Buckingham Palace as calm and measured, emphasizing adherence to protocol. Others suggested tension, even conflict, highlighting perceived divisions among senior royals. The result was a narrative battlefield, with Harry and Meghan's image entwined with speculation, conjecture, and ongoing media interpretation. At the same time, palace aides reportedly worked behind the scenes to prepare contingency plans. These included legal reviews, communication strategies, and crisis management protocols. Every advisor recognized that a misstep, whether in responding publicly, engaging with Parliament, or managing internal family dynamics, could escalate the situation further. And yet, the Sussexes' continued independence complicated these efforts. Harry and Meghan had cultivated a public persona outside the traditional monarchy, and this autonomy introduced unpredictability into the palace's calculations. Here's a key insight. While the palace publicly maintained neutrality, internal documents suggest a clear intent to assert authority where necessary. Advisors examined historical precedents where royals faced consequences for misconduct, including title revocation, restrictions on privileges, or public censure. The goal was twofold: uphold tradition and maintain credibility. Parliament's bill and the tax issue had essentially forced the palace to clarify, formally or informally, where it stood, and to prepare for any eventuality. The public reaction to the palace's signals was immediate. Social media users dissected even subtle movements: who was seen attending meetings, who appeared in public, and which statements were released to the press. Every gesture, facial expression, and word was analyzed, creating an intense pressure cooker. In this environment, any internal disagreement, however minor, risked being interpreted as scandal or conflict. Harry and Meghan, already accustomed to scrutiny, now faced the amplified stakes of a highly visible monarchy reacting to both legal and financial pressures. Interestingly, sources indicate that some advisors were concerned about messaging leaks. They feared that even minor miscommunications could fuel narratives of family conflict or institutional weakness. The palace, therefore, took a two-pronged approach. carefully controlled public statements, and tightly managed internal communications. Every word was measured, every announcement meticulously timed. And yet, the very existence of these controlled responses suggested to the public that something significant was unfolding, a perception that would only intensify the spotlight on Harry and Meghan. Meanwhile, the couple reportedly received formal communications from palace officials outlining expectations, potential consequences, and suggested actions. These were not threats, according to sources, but rather formal advisories emphasizing accountability, transparency, and compliance. Advisors cautioned that the combination of parliamentary action and tax scrutiny had set a precedent that could affect all members of the royal family. For Harry and Meghan, this was an unmistakable reminder. Independence does not equate to exemption. The family dynamics further complicated the picture. Some insiders claimed that relationships between senior royals and the Sussexes were strained. While private meetings aimed to maintain civility and collaboration, tension was inevitable. The introduction of a parliamentary bill challenging titles, coupled with public scrutiny of financial matters, created a situation where personal and institutional interests collided. Loyalty, pride, and historical precedent all came into play, producing a uniquely delicate environment for communication, negotiation, and response. Public perception remained a top concern. Buckingham Palace understood that how it reacted would influence media framing, social commentary, and overall sentiment. Transparency, accountability, and strategic communication became paramount. Every move was weighed for its potential impact on public trust, a cornerstone of the monarchy's legitimacy. And as insiders noted, even minor errors in messaging could have disproportionate consequences. Harry and Meghan, while independent in their branding, were inseparable from the monarchy's public image. Their response, or perceived lack thereof, could define the narrative for months, if not years. As pressure mounted, the palace also focused on legal preparedness. Advisors coordinated with Parliament, auditors, and legal teams to ensure that every possible outcome was anticipated. These measures weren't just procedural, they were strategic. They allowed the monarchy to respond decisively, protect its authority, and maintain credibility regardless of how Harry and Meghan acted. The interplay between legal authority, public perception, and family dynamics created an unprecedented level of tension within Buckingham Palace, highlighting just how high the stakes had become. And yet, amidst the planning, preparation, and messaging, an emotional undercurrent ran through the palace. The issue was not just legal or financial, it was deeply personal. Senior royals reportedly felt the weight of history, the responsibility to uphold centuries of tradition, and the pressure to demonstrate moral and institutional authority. At the same time, there was a recognition of Harry and Meghan's public appeal and the potential backlash if actions were perceived as punitive. Balancing these competing priorities required diplomacy, strategy, and perhaps a degree of calculated patience. Then came an unexpected twist. A confidential internal report indicated that some family members feared the public might side with Harry and Meghan. The couple's independent branding, media presence, and high-profile projects had cultivated a base of public sympathy. Advisors warned that any overreach could backfire, turning accountability into perceived persecution. Suddenly, the palace's response wasn't just about rules. It was about optics, public sentiment, and the delicate art of maintaining authority in the modern age. At the same time, Parliament was watching. Leaks suggested that legislators were keenly aware of the palace's reactions and internal dynamics. The interplay between legislative authority and royal discretion created a tense standoff. Each party, palace, Parliament, Harry, and Meghan, was maneuvering for influence, control, and narrative dominance. The stakes were immense, and the unfolding drama had captured global attention. So, where did this leave Harry and Meghan? They were facing not just a legal and financial challenge, but a direct confrontation with their family institution. Every decision, every public statement, every calculated move was now under scrutiny from multiple angles: legal, financial, familial, and media. The combination of pressure and exposure created a scenario that few could navigate without significant risk. And just when it seemed the palace had established its position, a confidential source revealed a potential internal leak. a document or communication that could upend strategic plans and expose vulnerabilities. This revelation hinted that despite careful management, the situation was far from under control. The Sussexes, Parliament, and the palace were now locked in a high-stakes interplay that could escalate unpredictably. The streets of London are buzzing. Cafes, pubs, and commuter trains are filled with people debating the same question. Should Parliament strip Harry and Meghan of their titles? Should they pay $550,000 in back taxes? For once, the monarchy isn't just a distant institution. It's a topic that dominates conversations across the nation. And the truth is, public opinion is far from uniform. The reactions are as diverse and complex as the country itself, a mix of outrage, sympathy, curiosity, and skepticism. It started subtly, with online chatter. Twitter threads analyzed the bill clause by clause. Reddit communities debated the ethics of taxing royals differently from ordinary citizens. And then, mainstream media picked up on the story, amplifying opinions and framing narratives. Headlines ranged from royal accountability at last to Parliament overreaches into private lives, and each article fueled the fire, influencing perception and creating a highly charged atmosphere. But while the media portrayed a drama for the world to watch, the heart of the story lay in public sentiment. What Britain thought, and continues to think, was beginning to shape the stakes for Harry and Meghan more than any legal document ever could. Opinion polls started emerging almost immediately. The numbers were surprising. A significant portion of the public supported Parliament's actions, seeing the title removal bill as a long-overdue assertion of accountability. Many questioned why royals could maintain privileges without full transparency, arguing that titles and duties should come with responsibilities. For these individuals, the Sussexes' lifestyle, while glamorous, symbolized a broader issue, a sense that the monarchy could operate in a sphere untethered from public oversight. Yet, there was a countercurrent of support for the couple. Social media users and advocacy groups highlighted Harry and Meghan's independence, their charitable work, and their challenges navigating a family institution that is notoriously rigid and often unwelcoming. Many sympathized with Meghan's struggles as an outsider and the intense scrutiny they both endured. They questioned whether the $550,000 tax issue was blown out of proportion, pointing to the complexity of managing global finances for a high-profile couple. In other words, while some saw scandal, others saw persecution. And this tension created a volatile, unpredictable mix of public sentiment. Interestingly, the debate extended beyond just whether the couple should pay the tax or retain their titles. People were discussing the deeper implications for the monarchy itself. If Parliament could remove titles from Harry and Meghan, what would that mean for future generations? Could younger royals face similar scrutiny? Would the monarchy need to modernize, adapting to public expectations of accountability? These questions resonated widely, fueling discussion in unexpected spaces, offices, schools, online forums, and even dinner tables across the country. But here's the twist. Public opinion is fluid. It doesn't just exist, it responds, evolves, and reacts to every leak, every statement, every media interpretation. One day, an article highlighting a loophole in the tax calculation could spark sympathy. The next, a leaked letter from palace advisors could ignite outrage. Harry and Meghan, for all their media savvy, were now at the mercy of a public whose mood could change by the hour. Every interview, every post, every appearance became a potential turning point in how they were perceived. A closer look at social media trends revealed something intriguing. Hashtags such as hashtag Sussex accountability and hashtag royal independence were trending simultaneously, showing the nation's divided stance. Analysts noted that younger demographics tended to favor Harry and Meghan, valuing independence, personal choice, and breaking free from traditional expectations. Older demographics leaned toward institutional respect, seeing the bill as a necessary measure to maintain the monarchy's credibility. This generational split hinted at a deeper, cultural tension between modern values and traditional authority that went far beyond a simple dispute over money or titles. Adding another layer, international perspectives began filtering into public discourse. News outlets from across Europe, North America, and even Asia reported on the situation, framing it as a clash between independence and institutional accountability. The global attention amplified domestic opinion, with some citizens feeling pride in Parliament's actions, while others worried about international perception of the British monarchy. Suddenly, what started as a national debate had become a global conversation, putting Harry and Meghan under scrutiny on a scale few royal couples have ever faced. Public opinion also became a tool in strategic communication. Parliament and palace advisors were acutely aware that shaping public perception could influence outcomes. Every leak, every media briefing, every carefully worded statement was designed to sway sentiment, or at least manage it. Harry and Meghan's team, in turn, worked tirelessly to project competence, responsibility, and sympathy, highlighting charitable work, public appearances, and personal challenges. Both sides understood the stakes. Public opinion could tilt the balance between negotiation and enforcement, perception and reality. But what makes public opinion so fascinating and dangerous is its unpredictability. One viral tweet could change the conversation overnight. One leaked email or misunderstood statement could ignite a storm of outrage. And while polling data provided some insights, it couldn't fully capture the nuances, the emotional undertones, and the viral dynamics that would dominate the discussion. Harry and Meghan were navigating a battlefield with no defined rules, where perception could be just as consequential as legality. Even within the United Kingdom, regional differences played a role. In London, media-savvy audiences debated financial ethics with a nuanced perspective, considering both legal and ethical implications. In rural areas, conversations focused more on fairness, tradition, and the role of money in the monarchy. Online communities amplified these divides, creating echo chambers where sentiment could harden or shift dramatically. For the Sussexes, understanding and responding to these regional variations was nearly impossible, yet crucial, because perception mattered just as much as any legal decision. The emotional stakes for the public were also high. People don't just react to numbers, they react to narratives. The story of Harry and Meghan paying, or being forced to pay, $550,000 became a proxy for larger questions: fairness, privilege, accountability, and generational change. Some citizens felt vindicated, seeing it as a triumph of equality over inherited privilege. Others felt empathy, viewing it as a persecution of a couple striving to create their own path while navigating relentless scrutiny. This duality created a dynamic, unpredictable landscape where every move by the Sussexes could inspire applause or outrage. And here's a shocking insight. Some polls indicated that a sizable portion of the population was undecided, swayed as much by media framing as by facts. For these individuals, each leaked document, every press statement, and each social media post acted as new evidence in an unfolding drama. Public opinion wasn't static. It was reactive, fluid, and capable of swinging wildly. In other words, Harry and Meghan's fate wasn't just being decided in Parliament. It was being negotiated in real time across social platforms, newsrooms, and public conversations. Yet, for all the numbers, polls, and trends, the most telling indicator of public sentiment was intensity. Not just whether people supported or opposed the actions, but how strongly they felt about them. Passion, emotion, and engagement often outweighed rational analysis. And as engagement grew, so did pressure on all parties involved. Harry and Meghan weren't just dealing with a financial or legal issue. They were navigating an emotionally charged, unpredictable, and highly visible national conversation. The Sussexes' supporters, meanwhile, continued to amplify messages of empathy and fairness, highlighting charitable endeavors, mental health struggles, and personal sacrifices. Critics, however, painted the couple as entitled, careless, and disconnected from reality. This polarized environment intensified scrutiny, making it difficult for the public to separate perception from fact, narrative from reality, and emotion from legality. Every tweet, every headline, every interview became a battleground for public sentiment. And just when it seemed the public's mood might stabilize, another wave of controversy hit. Leaked financial documents suggested previously undisclosed expenditures and allowances. Suddenly, $550,000 was no longer an isolated figure. It became part of a larger, more complex story about accountability, transparency, and the ethics of royal independence. Media outlets pounced, social media erupted, and public opinion began shifting again, demonstrating just how fragile and reactive sentiment could be. As Britain grappled with these revelations, the stakes for Harry and Meghan escalated. Every decision they made, from public statements to legal filings, was scrutinized, analyzed, and debated. Public opinion had become a force in its own right, capable of influencing Parliament, shaping media narratives, and even affecting internal family dynamics. The couple was not just defending themselves against a bill or a tax demand. They were navigating the court of public sentiment, where perception often carried more weight than legality. But just when it seemed the nation had formed a clear stance, a new poll emerged, revealing an unexpected shift. The majority of undecided citizens, swayed by leaked documents and media coverage, were now leaning toward the couple, highlighting a dynamic that was constantly in flux. For Harry and Meghan, this was both opportunity and risk. One misstep could erase public sympathy, while one strategic action could restore it. It began with a single headline, the kind that makes you pause mid-scroll, tilt your head, and whisper, "Wait, what?" Royal turmoil. Harry and Meghan faced title loss and 500